Told you so. So we are recording. But use the reaction or put your question in chat, because I don't always, you're not everybody is on the screen at the same time, in the Hollywood Square. So if you just raise your hand, I may not see it. So with that, unfortunately, again, we don't have anybody from Colorado speaking, and to be just brutally honest, those of us that do the gathering are just all swamped, and we've been trying to get speakers, and trying to track somebody down from the others is kind of slipped through the cracks, but we do try when we can. But Adam usually has some good information on the other team too, so he fills in nicely for that. And so with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Adam Brooks to let us know what is going on in the athletics department and what he may know about Colorado.
Thanks, Gary. I appreciate it. Man, tough one up in Eugene on Friday night. I think hung really well. The program had a chance to win it there in the fourth quarter, had a lead, and I think we could all see the team played much better last week than maybe we've seen them play all year. For Colorado, just in terms of just quick look, high level, they got a freshman quarterback from Texas. They don't really throw the ball around the yard too much. They like to run the football and play defense. And so a lot similar to kind of what we're accustomed to. But they're coming in here and hopefully we can get a win on Saturday. Not too much on the scouting report tonight, Gary and the team. Sorry about that. But yeah, we're excited for the opportunity on Saturday.
So what's going on? How was practice this week?
Yeah, it was a little rainy recently. I was out there today just briefly, but practice is good. Guys are still upbeat from what I can tell, and there's still a lot of games left in the season. So I know they're dedicated and finishing the season strong.
I was kind of talking to Larry before the meeting started. One of the concerns I had going into Oregon was, because they played so horribly against a not very good Washington State team, that going up into Eugene and playing a top 10 team could have been easily just a horrible disaster. But we saw that didn't happen. And it just seems to, maybe that the team, and this is not unusual, but the team seems to play up or down to the competition. Do you know what Coach Wilcox is like maybe doing to try to just play up always? Or is that was just more coincidence? I don't know. It just seems that they play up or down to the competition.
Yeah, that's not unlike most football programs. It tend to get up for big games, especially a top 10 team, and going into their place. And so, and then you kind of, come back down to the median a little bit on some not unranked opponents. I think Justin does a great job of preparing those guys each year or each day for every game. And from what I noticed, he is incredible at that. Now, whether the players are running the right plays and blocking the right guys, that's a different story. But I think Justin prepares those guys like it's a big game each week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think maybe one of the favors that Colorado did for us, and kind of in that vein, is because they have not been very good. And most people are looking and says, "Oh, if we're going to win a couple of more games, Colorado is probably going to be one of them." But Colorado had a big win last week. Now, granted, they were playing probably the worst team in the conference. They're playing Arizona, but nonetheless, it was still a big win. So yeah. that might, maybe that will make them look a little bit better. So we play up to them a little bit more.
Yeah, and they hung tough with Texas A&M. It was, I think, 13th in the country when they went into Colorado this year, and they lost 10-7 at home. So the talent's there. And yeah, you're right, Gary. It's something that's not overlooked with the coaching staff.
So I had another question too. is one of the other concerns I had for Oregon is that for some reason or another, it just seems that almost every year, the game that we play following a bye week, you're always expecting to say, well, they've had a bye week, the time to rest and heal, they should be looking really good, and they just aren't. But this was certainly an exception against Oregon. Did they do anything different or to kind of change that tradition?
I think the only thing I noticed that was different was they got some days off. These kids are putting a lot of hours on their body, and so to get a day off and the bye week certainly helps and all that. That I think true rest is probably accustomed to that absolutely, and success. That next weekend after a bye.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The other good thing, I'm not a big fan of the weeknight games, but the one nice thing about it is it actually gives them an extra day for this week.
Yeah, you don't want to play a Friday night game after a Saturday game, right? It's a really short turnaround. So when you do it after a bye week, guys are fresh.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the norm in scheduling now, is to, if you're going to play a weeknight game, to have a bye week before.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So does anybody else, I've been asking all the questions, anybody else have a question for Adam?
Yeah, I have a question, Adam. When it rains, is there a change in the practice schedule?
Not that I know of. Unless there's bad air quality or lightning, obviously those are the two main reasons we would either change practice completely at a different time or look at other venues, those kind of things. But yeah, no, it stays the same.
Other questions?
Derek's a lot more interesting than I am, so the sooner you get to him, the better.
Okay.
I don't agree with that, Adam. I think you're extremely interesting.
Thank you.
And you've got a better background than me for the evening.
Yeah, fair enough.
It's always good to hear the information, Adam. I think we're just kind of, what do you ask when the team's 1-5? It's not just harping on being 1-5.
Yeah, I think Justin's outlook on it is really one game at a time. There's 6 games left. There's still the potential to be bowl eligible. I think keeping that as a goal for the program is one the football team definitely hangs on to. But yeah, the season, as we all know, didn't go to kind of Justin's expectations, all of our expectations.
Did Justin say anything about that last sequence of plays ending the game in Oregon? I know I've seen some comments complaining about the play calls, but my recollection is there was a receiver that opened in the end zone that was overthrown. There was a receiver who dropped a pass in the end zone. I don't know. It just seems there's a whole combination of things that are self-inflicted wounds these days.
Yeah, definitely. There were, I think, 2 plays that we had touchdowns at. One was dropped and one was overthrown. And, I think you probably watched the film, and Chase probably watched those 2 throws back. But yeah, I think there was 7 or 8 plays within the 10. And, it's a situation where the clock is low. And, if you try to run the ball and get hit behind the line of scrimmage, that time just keeps ticking and pushes you back further. So, I think Coach Musgrave looked towards throwing the ball and trying to get in the end zone, and obviously didn't go our way.
Steve, Scott, you had a question too, it looked like.
I think Steve stepped away.
Oh.
There's an empty chair.
Okay.
Hey,
right.
Steve's empty chair. What have you got to say?
Went for the cocktail.
Yeah,
Exactly. Richard, you had a question.
Yeah, and actually I wanted to make a comment. I actually went up to the Oregon game, and it was exciting to watch. And I was right there on the 16-yard line where they were trying to punch it in at the end. And, that was so close, and it was a very exciting game. And I have to say, I was sort of concerned about Oregon fans being obnoxious, but a few of them thanked me for coming to the game. I mean, the worst thing was one group asked me, who did I think was going to win before the game? And actually, I sort of just said, go Bears, and they chuckled at that. But I mean, they did a lot better than I was expecting. And other than the case of food poisoning during the going up there, I enjoyed myself at Oregon.
Yeah, fans are great up there usually, and they pack the house, so it's a hostile environment for sure for anyone going into Autzen.
Yeah, but like there were a few I bought my tickets on was it Ticketmaster or what have you, and my seats were not in the Cal section because I always like to get reasonably good seats, and there were some Cal fans there, and like I said, all the Oregon fans either were nice or none were obnoxious, so that was positive. In fact, I took the flight up from Oakland to Eugene on Thursday, and there were a few Cal people there, and one was I guess the social media person for the team, because I was commenting that what was it, 2 weeks ago we had the recruiter and at this
NG, yeah.
Yes, and I guess they're roommates, or they were going to be staying in the same room there at the
Hotel room.
Yeah, I stayed at the Valley River Inn, which I liked. It wasn't downtown, but it was there was a shuttle that went from there or the Valley River Mall to the game, so that was convenient. And other than, like I said, I think I got some food poisoning at the Olive Garden there. Everything was good.
So Richard, you had a question about the Washington State coach.
Yeah, I was just curious, what does Cal or you personally think of, the Washington State coach being let go for not getting vaccinated, and I guess he has felt he had a religious exemption.
Yeah, it's tough. It's really tough. I mean, you're around, as a head football coach, you're around so many different people constantly throughout the day and indoors. It's tough. He had multiple chances. I think he and his staff did as well. I think 4 others got let go. I think they probably warned him what would happen, and that's ultimately it's our jobs to keep our student athletes safe. And if there's multiple coaches, especially that are unvaccinated, you're just at a little bit bigger of a risk. That's my personal opinion.
Is all of the Cal's coaching staff vaccinated then?
Yeah.
Okay. And players?
Yep. Unless there's a reason, approved reason, right? Why not?
Okay.
But yeah.
And Steve, you had a follow-up question.
Well, yeah, I was kind of curious how he was handled. The Washington State coach was handled when he came to Cal, because we have stadium protocols and campus protocols. Was he allowed to just bypass them, or was he?
Yeah, I think, and Derek actually might know this one a little bit better, but I'm pretty sure you're up to if you're up to your school standards when you come in to play a game. Obviously, we have certain protocols, but yeah, he was approved by Washington State, and so he was allowed to be in their areas and obviously on their sideline.
Does that include inside the visitors' locker room?
Yeah, it's with Washington State. That's my understanding of it.
Oh, actually, I could like to make another comment that at the Oregon game, or that the stadium by the Lane County, which is where Eugene is, that masks were mandatory at the stadium. I'd say 10% were wearing their mask. I wore my mask, but it's like I was thinking if Lane County had health officials there, they would have shut that place down.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, any other last questions for Adam?
I have one last question for Adam. This is an arms race question. And
Hey, I'm ready.
What impact do you see Oregon's proposed indoor practice facility for football having on the conference?
I saw that today.
Kind of the Taj Mahal of practice facilities.
If you go on Oregon's campus, and maybe Richard can attest to this, they have in the conference, they're in the top 3 of every facility that I saw while I was there. I mean, they just built a brand new massive video board in Autzen. That was a substantial amount of money, and now they're doing $130 million practice facility. They are investing in their facilities, and a lot of it is donor funded. And so we obviously know who their number 1 donor is, but they're a lot of their donor base is committed to making Oregon a destination for recruiting and best facilities on the West Coast in almost all of their programs. So yeah, it's something we all look at in the conference. We see an indoor practice facility. Obviously, they need that a little bit more with rain than we do for football, but we would actually probably be looking more at a men's basketball facility and women's basketball practice facility, because we're the only conference or school in the conference, that does not have one. So those are the things. Now Oregon is building this. A lot of it's based on recruiting. Some of it's practicing indoors without rain, but bring a recruit to a indoor practice facility on the West Coast, and it's pretty nice.
I got a question, Gary.
Yeah, go ahead, Ellis.
I was really disheartened at that game against Washington State, but the fact that Washington State beat us and then Oregon State, Stanford in the next 2 weeks, plus the fact that Cal played with a lot more spirit at the Oregon game, so I'm feeling a lot better now. But I was wondering about the loss of Sappel at center and Deng at linebacker, 2 of the guys that were kind of vocal leaders, and have other guys stepped up now to kind of take the as far as being leaders?
I kind of cut out there at the end. Was it about leaders? Is that
Yes.
what the question was? Right. Yeah, I think we talked a little bit about this last week. Coach always calls Cam Good a silent leader because he pretty much puts it all out on the field and leads by example. Mike Sfeld was definitely our guy on our offensive line, and with his injury and then decision to retire, you missed that. Matthew Cendrick, played special teams long snapper. That was a positive sign that we were able to make an extra point and a field goal. But yeah, it's hard to replace those guys. I don't know if it's within a kind of snap of a finger to be able to identify who those guys are on offense and defense. But it was a big loss to the program.
Hey, well, Adam, thank you again for always having the information for us and giving us the inside scoop. I hope you can hang around for Derek because he's always incredible. But you know that.
I know that.
Yeah. All right. So Adam, thanks so much. See you next week. All right. So let's move on to the main event here. So Derek's been with us a couple of times now, and as always, gives us incredible information about the academics and the academic program, the Athletic Studies Center. Derek is pretty familiar with the Berkeley campus. He got a couple of degrees there. He got a BA in political economy in German, an MA, his master's in education, and a PhD in cultural studies, which is 2 more degrees than I got. And I'm going to guess he had a GPA that's probably about 2 points higher than mine was. So, and also because, that really didn't apparently take up enough of his time. He also played soccer and was a professional soccer player later. And he is now the executive director of the Athletic Studies Center and a professor at Cal. So he knows his way around and has a lot of great information for us. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and introduce Dr. Derek Van Rheenen.
Thank you, Gary. Go Bears, go Bears, go Bears. It's so great to be here with all of you. And I want to thank the Sacramento Grid Club. I've been up there many times. I have to say, this is a lot easier a travel. I have spent like 3 or 4 hours in the car back and forth before trying to navigate this. So this is actually a pleasure. And I also know a lot of you and our friends and colleagues, and you guys have been extremely supportive of Cal Athletics, but also the Athletic Studies Center. So I appreciate that. I just want to give a little historical reference about the Athletic Studies Center, and then talk about some really good news, which is on the academic front. Not necessarily on our records, but on the academic front, things are actually looking really good. And I'm proud to talk about that. One, I just wanted to, I know many of you already probably know this, but the Athletic Studies Center at Berkeley was established in 1984. I was actually a student athlete at that time there. And when I graduated, I didn't actually know the Athletic Studies Center existed. So I graduated in December of 1986. That tells you something kind of interesting. It was established by faculty and Central Campus. It has never reported into the Department of Intercollegiate Athletics. It's always reported outside of athletics. Currently, I report to the interim Vice Provost of Undergraduate Education, Professor Oliver O'Reilly. He's a mechanical engineer and an amazing guy. For many, many years, I reported to Professor Kathy Koshland. I've reported to Professor Christina Masluk. Before that, Professor Genaro Padilla. I have been the director, now the executive director of the Athletic Studies Center for over 20 years. I started on June 11th, 2001. And it's not that I remember that because this job has been so awful. It's that 3 years into my term was September 11th, 2001. And I remember as the leader of an organization driving after seeing the mayhem in New York City of like, what am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to say? As it turns out, we lost a cousin who was a firefighter in the World Trade Center. So it was an extremely emotional day. So that date is so on my mind forever. But yeah, I've had a lot of years, and next year will be 40 years that I started as a freshman at Cal as a student athlete and a soccer player. You probably know a little bit about our mission, but our mission is actually to help young men and women to develop transformative academic skills and competence and confidence and become self-reliant and independent, regardless of their backgrounds. We have such an incredibly diverse student athlete population that is in-state, out-of-state, international. They come with a variety of skill sets, not just athletic, obviously, but academic. Some are first generation, low income. Some have not had a parent that ever went to college before. That is overrepresented in the revenue sports of football and basketball. We tailor our academic support individually for the student. There's no cookie cutter approach to academic support for any student. It's really based upon their own profiles as they come in, their needs as they demonstrate it. Some people look great on paper and struggle. Some people look not very good on paper and actually transition quite well. So it's really a staying on top of the moment, the real time. You probably know, and this was during my term, that at one point Cal had some of the worst graduation rates in the country. In 2013, the chancellor then, Chancellor Nicholas Dirks, created a task force on academics and athletics to really address this issue. It was also the time, or shortly thereafter, that we had been almost the #1 football program in the country. And so I think we can have comprehensive excellence, but I think we also took our eye off of the ball in the academic setting in terms of the recruitment of students who really were not a good institutional fit. And it came back to bite us and hurt us as an institution, given our values and given the rigor that is Berkeley. I believe that when we are ranked the #1 university in the world by Forbes, there's a reason for that. I think we might all agree that Berkeley is probably one of the most difficult, academically rigorous universities in the world. And we make no compromises, regardless of what you are participating in extracurricularly. So this is not an easy place. And these are amazing young men and women that we work with. It's actually kept me motivated, with passion, and with a calling for as long as I've been doing this, not only as a student athlete, but supporting these young men and women who are just incredible. I want to put a plug in football now for Marquez Bimage. He is a linebacker who is in my graduate program. He's earning his master's. He came to us from the University of Texas at Austin. And he has somewhat filled the void of our injured leader, who we talked about earlier. And he got a fumble recovery, but he's just an amazing young man. And I just want to give a shout out to Marquez Bimage, who is a graduate student, and he's one of my graduate students. I want to talk a little bit about just where we're at, because based upon being one of the worst in the country, we have made our progress back to becoming significantly one of the best in our conference and in the country. We are now around close to 90% graduation rates for our student athletes. And when those get published, as you probably know, those actually only reflect the individuals who enter the institution on financial and athletic aid, not just financial aid, but athletics aid. And we have a full 1/3 of our population that are non-scholarship. They're called walk-ons, which is kind of a ridiculous notion these days. Nobody just walks on, but they are non-scholarship. And those numbers are not counted in the graduation rates. And as you might expect, those are generally very good students. So our graduation rates are very similar, if not similar, and if not higher than the general student body now among the student athletes. And this is not public knowledge, but the men's basketball team's next graduation rate, which is a 4-year average, is going to be 100%. 100%. And if, for those of you like me who've been around forever, that's a big, big change in where we were at one point. So 100% for your men's basketball program. Now, granted, you want to also win. You also want to win the conference and the national championship, but that's not my job. My job is to get these graduation rates and these APR numbers up, and to support these young men and women to get the most out of their meaningful degree at Berkeley, which, as you all know, is an amazing place. And I tell each and every one of them, wring this experience out like a sponge. This is such an amazing intellectual, cultural, academic, athletic place, and just make it everything that you can in this 4 years, 3.5 years, 4.5 years, 5 years, whatever that might be. It's in an incredible space. I can share with you in the chat at the end of this my most recent, and this is public, report. It's a semi-annual report that I create, and it shows all the GPAs. It shows the majors of the student athletes relative to the general student body. It's really an amazing, it's an amazing report, because never before have we had the result that we just had in the last year. And that is, we have 30 varsity sports, and every single one of them has a cumulative GPA above 3.0. Every single one of them, including football, including men's basketball. And in fact, women's basketball had at one point last fall, the highest women's basketball, the highest team GPA of the 30. And they were second after women's swimming and diving this past spring, something around a 3.57. This is the whole team. And so when I hear that Charmin, who's a friend of mine, Charmin Smith, is coming, she's amazing. She is just an amazing leader, an amazing coach, and an amazing inspiration to the young women on that team. And Justin and Mark Fox are also true educators that want these young men and women to flourish at a place like Berkeley. So I'm extremely proud to be here. I want to open it up for some questions, but the good news is we may not be winning as many games as we thought we were, but we are making serious strides in the classroom. And the last thing I'd say is just that, you know, when you map on the academic requirements and expectations of being a student at Berkeley, that comes with a lot of stress and a lot of pressure. We're right now in midterms. So, you know, when you see that young men and women don't perform that well, they might have done what we did, which is they had to pull an all-nighter to study for a midterm. They are really tired. They're really exhausted because unlike some places, and I'm not going to name any, they don't expect the same kind of things relative to academics and rigor that Berkeley does. So these kids are working their tails off and they're amazing. And you know, I just have to say that actually I just love these kids. They're like my kids. And my staff loves these kids. We embrace them in total and utter support. So with that said, happy to be here. Thanks for joining. It's a pleasure.
So Derek, I'm actually going to start off with a question that kind of popped into my head as you were saying those last few words. Is, you know, when I was at Cal, and for a long time, I know after that, and there was a pretty big chasm between the athletic department and academics, that professors just would have loved to have gotten rid of academics. I remember professors and that would say that when they saw somebody in their class from the football team, they would make the class sound really hard and take a lot of work, so they would leave. They didn't even want them in the class. So now with the really impressive GPAs on all of the teams, you know, clearly academics is being put front and center. Has that impacted that feeling, or that feeling amongst the faculty in terms of support of athletics?
Yeah, that's a great question, Gary. I think the truth is Berkeley faculty, of which I am one, tend to be kind of into their own worlds. In general, we like to say that about 10% of the faculty are super supportive of athletics, 10% of the faculty are super negative about athletics, and 80% just don't want to be bothered. They want to do their research, they want to teach, they want to do their writing, and they want not to be troubled by it. So people like myself and our faculty athletic rep, Professor Bob Jacobson of physics, we're kind of the intermediaries of making certain that there aren't problems, that we can make things as easy as possible in terms of proctoring and in terms of conflicts. There is a vocal 10% that just seems to hate athletics and oftentimes doesn't actually know the facts. So
Don't let that stop you.
What's that?
I said, don't let that stop you.
No, no. But I have to be in a role to be politically savvy and also just provide the actual facts without getting into a mud bath with some of these individuals, but there still is a vocal, and I hear from student athletes that they go to classes, and some faculty will say, if you're a student athlete, then don't take my class, which is discrimination. If you said that about any other single group, that would be discrimination. And so flat out, it's discrimination. And we have to be sensitive to their concerns, but we also have to be strong advocates for these young men and women.
Derek, what is the relationship and coordination between, because I'm hearing what you're doing and I'm very impressed, continue to be very impressed by what the Athletic Study Center does. And with the implementation of the new Cameron Institute, what is, I mean, that is inside athletics, you are outside athletics, but what's the coordination? How do you work together or not?
No, that's a great question, Rick. The woman who was hired, who is the head of the Cameron Institute, was actually a graduate student who I supported in terms of the collection of her data when she did her dissertation. So Dr. Marissa Nichols and I are really tight. And I actually was a strong advocate for her being hired. So I think the Cameron Institute's amazing because, number one, we have a donor who is fully supportive of the student athlete experience. And my charge and my mission is academic development, transformative academic development. But we all know that that crosses over, you know, a kid, if he doesn't feel like he belongs, he's not going to do well academically. So it's not simple, like I'm in one lane and I can only think about academics. But with the additional resources that are coming through the Cameron Institute, we can do a better job than we have in the past relative to career development, relative to community service, leadership development. And we're working really hard to try to synchronize our efforts. So one example is we collaborate, the Cameron Institute and the Athletic Studies Center, on freshman and sophomore seminars that are transitional in nature, that are looking at major exploration as well as career exploration. And we are working very closely to help make the student athlete experience at Berkeley the premier one in the country. I don't think we're there yet. I think there's still a lot of work to be done, but I think we have more resources than we've ever had. And the truth is, we at the Athletic Studies Center tried to do a lot of these things, but we really didn't have the bandwidth and the resources to do so. So having these resources for me is like a game changer.
Derek, I don't know if you have chat open there, but Richard had a question about what percentage of student athletes take advantage of your services?
Well, every single one, 100%. And that's because we are basically what we call intrusive advising. That is that our advisors work with the coaching staffs and the student athletes from the moment they arrive. So we're involved in the recruitment process, we're involved in team meetings, and we're involved in orientation. So we host an orientation for all the student athletes, but every single student athlete is impacted. Now, some situations require us to, and we don't use the word mandate because as an educator, I don't think you learn by forcing people to learn. But we do have a model that is kind of like a caseload model where the kids we know that probably or are likely to struggle, we create this caseload. And I have 5 learning specialists. I used to have 6. Budget cuts took one of them away, but I have 5 learning specialists that have a caseload of the students that we believe are the most institutionally vulnerable, based on their profiles and also based upon their performance once they arrive. And so we wrap our support around the most institutionally vulnerable, but I require all my advisors to work and meet with every single incoming freshman, regardless if they have a 4.8 GPA, and to transition them in. So the answer is all of them. Now we do have, if you go on our website, we have on the homepage a tutor request that they can ask for tutors in different courses, different study strategies, writing, reading, and so forth. And we have probably on that, which is totally voluntary, we have probably about 55% of the student athletes that utilize that service. So, but the answer is actually 100%. And I require my staff to be interacting constantly with their student athletes, as well as their coaches, as well as the sport administrator, particularly if there are issues that arise.
Derek, I got a question about that very interesting percentages you gave there. 10% of the faculty supportive of athletics, 10% opposed to athletics, and the 80% that don't want to be bothered. Well, that's really interesting. I would wonder how other schools in the Pac-12 even compared to those kind of percentages as far as faculty, because even Stanford, I've heard Stanford does not give out any Fs to anybody. So even place like Stanford that's, known for being pretty academic too, but they're even more probably lenient than Cal is.
Yeah, I mean, of course, you're asking a Cal graduate who's only been at Cal to talk about Stanford. So it's kind of a setup. But yeah, there's no doubt in my mind that Stanford is an easier school than Cal. There's just no doubt in my mind. And perhaps it's a private public thing that they don't want to send young kids back with F's or D's, but Cal doesn't have any problem with that. And so I think you're right. I think Berkeley has had an ambivalent and at times antagonistic relationship with the athletic department, which is something over 20 years I've been trying to help fix. And because I was a student athlete, and because I have my PhD from Cal and I'm a professor, I tried to demonstrate, like, please don't frame us and paint us as dumb jocks. This is a athletic community, but it's also an intellectual and social community. And the reason why kids come to Cal, like a Jaylen Brown, is not because he couldn't have picked a better basketball school. He came to Cal because of Cal. He came because of its history of political activism, of intellectual curiosity. These kids, they pick Cal over other schools and they have to work harder. So I'm obviously a strong advocate for these young men and women, but I don't think Cal has been an easy place for student athletes. And I would emphasize it's been particularly difficult for student athletes of color. And particularly since Prop 209's passage.
Yeah, Derek, I put a comment in chat, I don't know if you're looking at it, but that two people that you've named so far have actually been speakers here. Dr. Marissa Nichols was a speaker here last year on Zoom. I was really grateful that she came up, and Bob Jacobson was here in person in 2019. So we're familiar with them, and they're fantastic. So we have a couple questions in chat here. David, you had a question on scholarships. Why don't you go ahead and ask, because I don't know that I'm going to be able to say it right.
Oh, I was just wondering if a person's not doing too well, grade point average wise, and they want to enter the transfer portal to try and go to an easier school, because like Cal and UCLA are high standards, but they could go to USC or out of state, so it's just the luck of the draw. I mean, we have a high bar that's raised. And did we ever find out how much it costs to fire the cannon off? That's a future question. And then we should make a t-shirt that says my GPA is my sport, academics #1 or something like that. But hopefully the athletic department will come on board, because I know Sandy's over at Penn State now and she's got her own issues or whatever, but they're also number 5 in the country or whatever. But anyway, I'm off my soapbox. Hopefully, I was just wondering how the transfer portal now plays into the GPA thing, or.
It's actually, David, it's a really timely question. COVID has created a bit of a nightmare for me and for people like Bob and Jim Knowlton, because the NCAA, which is getting weaker and weaker, is not really moving in to make many decisions, which we could get into. But what's ended up happening is that they've basically said that kids can have extra years of eligibility because of COVID. So we, for the first time, have kids that basically have been granted 6 years of athletic eligibility, which for me means that for the kids, which almost all of them are on track and are academically really successful, we have to either slow them down or we have to figure out a way to enhance their educational and academic experience, be it adding a minor, double majoring, or graduating and going on to graduate school. Berkeley, because of its rigor, is much harder to get kids into graduate programs than other schools that have just basically, we'll let you in if you have a heartbeat. And so we lose out to some of the best athletes who, as you imagine, Justin, for example, he is developing a young man on the team. And by the time he's a fifth-year senior, that's the best time in theory, right? If you are coaching someone and then we lose that student athlete to a different school, that's a very bad disadvantage competitively. But that has been a challenge for us across all the sports, but particularly in basketball and in football, it's a particularly difficult challenge because we are trying to figure out a way, how do we keep them here? The college is not that helpful always either into saying like, listen, the kid's got 120 units, get him out of here. But the coach and the athletic department is saying, he's earned this. He's done everything right. You're penalizing him because he's done everything right. And he should still be on the team, and we should still figure out a way to keep him here because he's one of our captains. And then he ends up going to Michigan, to get a master's degree or, somewhere else. That's a real challenge.
Wow. Lee and Linda, you had a question. Are you muted?
I wondered, in light of your description of the high academic achievement, I wondered, does that act to attract recruits or does it intimidate some of the prospects?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that for the most part, it's super attractive. Now, sometimes it's more super attractive to the parents than it is to the kid.
That's important.
Yeah, that they're saying like, listen, you are a gifted student athlete and you should leverage this because you have the academic pedigree. You should leverage this to go to the very best school you can. So the parents or guardians are very much in the ear of the kids. So too are the high school coaches or the club coaches who have connections in. So for the most part, I would say, the vast majority of our kids are choosing to come to Berkeley because of the balance of academic elite and athletic elite in the Conference of Champions. Every now and again, I will get a kid and their mother or their father or both in my room a recruit that will ask questions. And I always ask, so what other schools are you looking at? Which is extremely good indicator about really what is their priority. And again, I don't want to come across as elitist, but I am. I am very much a Berkeley elitist. And when they say some of the schools that they say, and they're like, I'm looking at this and that, it's like, whoa, that doesn't make any sense. If someone says, I'm looking at this school, Virginia and Michigan and Stanford and Harvard and Berkeley, okay, got it. When they name other schools, I'm not going to say any, and they're like, I'm really interested in that. I'm thinking, well, that's a kind of strange thing. It's like, I don't go into detail, but it's like, if you're interested in practice facilities, Adam talked about this earlier. If you're interested in basketball practice facilities, there's a lot of places to go that are better than Cal. If you're interested in one and out and you want to go into the NBA or the NFL, there are a lot of schools that are better than Cal. And they should go to those schools. I know that probably doesn't sound good to Cal fans that want to win, a national championship. But truth be told, those students won't be successful here academically. And because they won't be successful academically, they won't be successful athletically. I've seen a lot of kids that are like 4-star, 5-star come in that look really, really good athletically, but they struggle so much in the classroom that they never meet their athletic potential.
Derek, it's interesting that what you were saying that about the winning national championship, and we want to do that. Many years ago, Sandy Barber, on the day that she came up to speak to Grid Club, had been on the radio earlier that day And I don't remember who the interviewers were, but they asked, the question was posed to her is, don't you think that your backers, the Cal fans, would be willing to give up some of the academics prowess of the students, for lack of a better term, if you could just win, get to the Rose Bowl? And she apparently, I didn't hear it myself, but she apparently laced into the guy and just said, absolutely not. That absolutely not, that the Cal backers, the Cal Roos, they want their students to succeed in the classroom, that they're students first. And I remember that the entire fan base was giving her a standing ovation for that interview. So it's interesting, yeah, we want national championships, we want Rose Bowl, but we don't want to do it at the cost of their academic achievement.
Yeah, I don't think anybody, at least in the administration at Cal, is willing to compromise that. I just think we went down that road with those graduation rates and the recruitment of young people that were just not good institutional fits. And it was wrong. It was not just wrong because of our reputation. It was wrong for the kids. Like, we brought kids in to fail. They weren't going to make it. And that's unethical. That's just unethical. You can't do that to win a game. And so I don't think anybody is going to compromise our values. I do believe, however, and maybe I'm a Pollyanna, but I do believe that we can have both. I'm a strong believer that you recruit smart kids and you coach them. The only reason I made it to the pros is because I was smart. It wasn't because I was a great soccer player. I was smart. I mean, that's the truth.
Yeah. Well, and I remember too, on those years that we were recruiting not that great students that were failing, we didn't do well on the field either. So yeah. So I'm going to go, Steve Swat, you had a question.
Yes, I think you answered it. My question was really what's your pitch to recruits, and it sounds to me like you sort of vary your pitch depending on who you're talking to, and that you do your homework in advance.
Yeah, I got great relationships with the coaches, and I've been, many of them have been around as long as I have, if not longer. So, they're recruiting a different population of kids. It's a very diverse group of students. One thing that's kind of funny, Steve, is that I had a graduate student whose sister is an artist, and she paints pictures of athletes, particularly strong female athletes. And so in my office at Cal, I have this very large painting of a women's basketball player, a very strong athletic women's basketball player. And I joke with the parents that I changed that painting to reflect the sport of the 30 sports. I have 30 of these and I put them up, but depending upon it. But I would go back to say that because I love Berkeley and because I bleed blue and gold, I know the experience and I know the community. And so I'm so excited about Berkeley that I hope that gets exuded. And as I said earlier, I want these kids to come and wring out the Berkeley educational experience like a sponge. I want them to be involved in athletics, in academics, in research, in internships, in every possible opportunity they can get. And the kids like a Jaylen Brown, again, who is like, he was a student of mine. I love Jaylen. That is the model of a student athlete to me. He is intellectually curious. He is politically active. He's a world changer. This is what I tell these kids and their parents, like, you need to come to Cal because you want to change the world. That's the bottom line. You need to believe that you will change the world. That's who we want here.
Do you find there are some instances where you're talking to a recruit and their parents, and maybe the recruit is not entirely sure he or she can keep up with the academic rigor at Cal, and so you have to sort of talk them off the ledge a little bit?
For sure. I mean, that's what I do. I mean, that's our academic support, but we don't handhold. We're not like codependents. We're not saying like, you're going to always have us and we're going to be here for you 24/7. We can't promise that. And they have to meet us halfway. If they can't do that and they're not up to the task, they shouldn't come here. I'm really open with kids about what is realistic and what's not, including what majors. You know, sometimes I'll have, and I won't name any names, but I'll say, you know, a kid will come in or their parents will come in and say, I want my daughter to be an engineer at Berkeley. And her math is really good. Of course, we're not taking SATs right now, but she got a 480 on her math SAT. It's like 480. I mean, I don't say this out loud, but the average SAT math, it used to be for engineering, was 800. I mean, it's like, it is so incredibly competitive. It's like, I'm not going to lie to the parent and the kid like, oh yeah, you can definitely do engineering here. It's like, this is going to be a really difficult road for you, but here's how you could do it. I'm not saying you can't. You're going to have to start with pre-calculus, then you're going to do calculus, and then you're going to go up to much more complicated math. If that's what you want to do, it's going to be a lot of work, and you're going to be a Division I student athlete.
Thanks, Derek.
Yeah.
Derek, the questions that Steve just asked dovetail into what I was thinking, which is in regards to, you alluded to the fact that there are some kids, regardless of GPA, that are institutional fits or not institutional fits. What criteria, what qualities are you looking for that kind of say, danger, danger, Will Robinson, or whoa, this kid can make it?
Grit and perseverance, hard workers, people who are hard workers can make it. Intellectual curiosity. Like when I talk to a kid, I can tell immediately like, wow, he or she is like asking questions. If they're a bump on a log and they're not asking anything and I can't elicit anything, that worries me. I think that Berkeley, as you all know, is a diverse, culturally rich environment, and sometimes kids that come from very sheltered backgrounds struggle. Not that they can't overcome it, but I just give you one anecdote. I won't name sport or anything like that, but I had one young person who was homeschooled by their parents who were evangelical, and it was very hard to get the student in because we had to articulate his homeschooling transcript with biology according to God, various things like that. And he came and he went the direction you might worry. He was without his parents' oversight. He went a little wild and didn't pass one class. I don't think he ever went to class, but he found a new version of himself.
David, you had another couple of questions?
Yeah, I was just watching Channel 3 news about UC Davis, overcrowded classrooms. My daughter is going there now, and they had it on. But to cut back to this, yeah, I bleed blue. Also, I remember Isaac Curtis and Mike White put us on probation, and Jeff Tedford did good initially, but then on a 5-year cycle, he brought our grades way down, graduation rates and all that. So I can understand what you're talking about. I posted one thing here. I was just curious, who is the oldest freshman you have ever come across in basketball or football? Because I know there was a Sac State. I went to Sac State, and there was a kid there that he was 30 years old, and he said he was a freshman. He played 4 years, and then he came back, and nobody knew him. He had an alias, and he just kept playing until they caught him. Kind of like that one Cuban baseball player who said he was 13 and he was really 16. But anyway, I know I'm Mormon also, and we have a slight advantage when they play at age 20 instead of age 18. and Stanford's got a quarterback right now who's really good. He's LDS, but I'm just wondering how age factors into it, and, you want to be honest and not have played the system twice, but just kind of throwing it out there.
That's an interesting question. I don't actually know I don't have a factual answer to that, but what I can tell you is that my experience has been that individuals who have played professionally in a different sport and then shift over to a different sport are some of the oldest students. So for example, we have had on football, since we're talking about football, we have had Australian professional football players who have then shifted over to American football, and they've already had a career, but they're really, really good. And so they can be a punter or a kicker, right? And so those are probably the biggest cases that I have seen, because athletics is so competitive. You're right about, it's interesting that you were saying about the LDS, because you probably remember historically, or well, not remember, but that historically, when after the GI Bill and all of that, that college football had a lot of guys that came back from war, and
Army, Navy.
And they were much older, and it was like men playing against boys, and so it changed the landscape of football. And when I played soccer at Cal, I don't know if you guys remember this, but USF, University of San Francisco, was a powerhouse. And the reason why they're a powerhouse is because they had all these older guys who had played on their national teams and professionally in Europe. And literally, it was men playing against boys. They were like professionals playing against young amateur American kids. And they swept and they won the national championship.
Mm-hmm.
Eric,
Thank you.
Derek, this is Patty in Sacramento, as we all are. I was happy when Gary said that he got you to be a speaker, and I thought, oh, we've seen Derek before. He's been up a couple of times, and and I was president of the club some time ago, and I thought, I might even have asked him, because I would get out the old media guide and who's doing what, and what don't we normally look at when we're looking at football. Let's see if we can get the academic guy. So then I see that while I was president, you were still an undergraduate. So obviously you didn't come at my invitation, but I'm glad that you're still here. I see that you've really only had one job. You were either the director or the executive director. And so a question is, how has your job changed over time, since you're basically still the head rat in the academic advising or support? And I'm delighted you're still here, because there is so much turnover in the athletic department. But if you got a bear, you keep them. So I'm delighted.
Well, thank you, Patty. I appreciate you, and I definitely appreciate this group. But I'm in Oakland, California, not in Sacramento right now. But it's interesting. Yeah, a lot of things have changed over time. I'll just name two. When I first started in this world, there was no such thing as a cadre of employee called a learning specialist. Then it became extremely popular in my line of work to begin to hire learning specialists. And I was fairly resistant to the change. I thought it was an indication of coddling. I thought it was an indication of even exploitation of young people that really didn't belong at institutions. But I learned over time that it's an extremely important position and job. So when I first started, there was no learning specialist at the Athletic Studies Center. And now I have 5. At one point I had 6. And these are extremely vital positions in the line of work that I do. So I have academic advisors, and what I like to say about that is they kind of look at the macro picture, like, what's your kind of academic pathway? What's your degree plan? What's your graduation plan? But the learning specialists are a extremely skilled professional cadre of folks that are much more micro, in that they work with these young people around time management, around creating a calendar, around skill development, that they can afford to take the time with these young people in a much more intensive way. So that's a huge change that's happened over 20 plus years now that I've been doing this. The other huge change is more recent, and that is COVID. I was extremely anxious and nervous in COVID because literally overnight, our services had to go fully remote, completely remote, which is not something we do. We are extremely hands-on in person with people. And my whole shop, including me, I had built out my office in my garage, went for 16 months, essentially, totally remote. And I thought, this is going to be a disaster. The kids are going to completely suffer. And a few kids did suffer who really needed that. But overall, it actually worked immensely well. And we were able to meet the needs of kids across the globe, across time zones, one-on-one in group settings and all of this. And my advisors would joke with me. It's like, I'm not advising them about school. I'm advising them about like their suffering and their mental health during this point. And they met their parents and their kids and their animals. And we were like a conduit to Berkeley remotely that was providing a sense of belonging. But that night that I went remote, I was scared. I was completely scared that this thing is going to just completely blow up in my face. And so I would just say, Patty, those are two things that have happened over the course of my 20 years that have been major shifts. And I just add at the end of that, it's just like, what I now need to do, and I need to think about is like, what did we learn? What have we learned during the pandemic that enhances the support we provide for young people, that is now some sort of a hybrid version? Because some kids, like young women, for example, reported to us, I actually like this because the truth is, I used to get scared going over to tutoring at night, walking across campus. I prefer that this is online and I feel safer in my dorm.
Eric, I got a question. I remember Sandy Barber saying that we're never going to be in Alabama or in Ohio State. And I think about your comments about how well we're doing for the whole academic of all sports, what we're paying. And that's great. And then your thoughts about, the athlete should experience not the academic part of Cal, but, the overall experience of college life. And then I think about what's disappointing for me is, why isn't the whole student body more appreciative of the athletes that we have at Cal and support the team? It's kind of, when I went to Cal, the rooting section for the students was just completely full. And now I see just, a lack of support by the students, and they should appreciate the athletes.
Yeah, I think that, first of all, I think Jim is doing a great job. Let me just say, I sit on Jim's cabinet, even though I don't report to Jim, I sit on his cabinet. He's got great energy. He's doing a really good job, as is the marketing folks. My understanding, Lester, is that we actually have sold out the last several years the student section. I think that the win-loss record has had an impact. But I think that they actually are more enthusiastic. And I think there's also been a craving for sports, college sports, as this freshman and frankly sophomore class that were not here. We've been joking that we have 2 freshman classes at Berkeley right now who've come back in person because they didn't experience their freshman experience. And one of the ways that Berkeley freshmen, or now sophomores and freshmen, want to experience that is through going to football games, going to basketball games. So I actually think that we're trending in the right direction. I think the records may not help. I think, certain games are obviously more of a pull than others. But I actually think that that is shifting in a positive light. And I think the fact that the kids are doing really well academically is helping too, because if they were doing poorly like they were in the past, the student body turns on them just like the faculty does. And they're like, you don't really belong here. You're interlopers. Why are you even bothering to come to a place like Berkeley? You embarrass us. But now, because they're doing so well, I think the kids are embracing them in a much more meaningful way.
Well, I think after the Washington State game, when we seem to have played so miserably, I kind of joked to my friends, well, I hope they're going to class. And clearly they are. You know what? It's just whether they win or lose on the football field, these are going to be captains of industry. These are kids who know how to not get lost in Dwinell, who know how to cross campus, who know how to do the things that you need to do to be successful at Berkeley. And I'd much rather they're successful after their college athletic experience than to go to the NFL or the NBA or whatever else and get beat up and not know how to manage their money and not know how to manage their time and act like some of the other conference stars that we have seen who are truly embarrassing.
Yeah, I agree.
Our Bears are great.
I agree, Patty. I totally agree. And I think what I hope doesn't happen is that the pressure to win changes our values in any way or changes our standards. I've worked too hard over these years to have that go the other direction, because I truly believe that we can win and do both. In support of Justin and in support of the coaches on the football program, I like Justin a lot as a head coach. I really feel like this season could be flipped in not the Washington State, but I really feel like the record could be significantly different. And I know I really believed that. I can say as an insider, there was extreme confidence going into this year. And I know Jim feels that way. I feel that way. The kids felt that way. The coaches felt that way. I don't know what's happened, but I believe we have the talent to be successful on the field. And I know they're great kids. I mean, they are great kids. So I'm actually sad for the kids, because I really think everybody thought, wow, this is going to be our season. This is going to be a big season for us. So I think we're all sort of scratching our heads like, what happened? What happened? But I believe in these kids like so much. They're such great kids.
Well, Derek, thank you so much. It's you've been our longest speaker this night because of all the questions we've had. And as always, it's absolutely a pleasure to have you here. And I think I can speak for everybody how much we appreciate the work that you're doing and the work that you've done, because we all support our student athletes on the field, but certainly we want them to do well in the classroom, and they clearly are, and things seem to be getting better and better and better. And we hope the trajectory continues. And we know that a lot of that is due to the work that you and your team do. But in as much as credit as I give you and your team, I think that it would not be fair not to give credit to the student athletes themselves, because if they're not working at it, it's not going to happen.
Oh yeah, they deserve more of the credit than anybody, for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to be with you. I really appreciate great questions and great dialogue. So thank you so much. And I look forward to next year.
Yes, next year, well, we definitely want to have you back again, and to give us the updates, because they're it is so important to all of us. And now, of course, the only downside, you do have the advantage, you don't have the hours and hours stuck in traffic, which is only getting worse from Berkeley to Sacramento and back. But the only downside is that we can't take you to dinner.
I know, I liked that. And I especially liked because we would go downstairs, like just walk down the stairs and have the dinner. So that was good. But if anybody's going to be at the game on Saturday, I'll be there too. So, let me know, and we'll get a hot dog together or a glass of wine.
Well, I'll be there.
Okay. Reach out to me. Actually, let me put in the chat. I think I told you I was going to do this. So there's that. And then also, I just sent that to Patty directly. Sorry, Patty, didn't mean to. I don't know why I did that. But
that's okay. I can share it.
Well, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it here for everyone. And then this is my cell phone. If you want to text me, if you're going to be down in Berkeley, so you reach out to me.
Okay, where do you sit?
Well, I hate to say it, but I'm up at the top at the AD suite and the Chancellor suite.
Okay.
But I will.
We'll just meet you up there.
But I'll come anywhere. Anywhere in the stadium.
Well, tell Jim and Carol that we'll come.
Yeah, just so Carol will be there. That we'll knock on the door and we'll just come on in.
I think what we should say for this game is the Sacramento Grid Club is welcome into the Chancellor's suite.
Okay, although
that's very nice of you, Derek.
Well, we do tell you that we are renamed. We're now Sac Bears Cal fans.
Oh, okay. Okay. That sounds good. Thank you.
All right. Well, Derek, again, thank you so much. As I say, it's always a pleasure to have you here, and we appreciate all that you do. And with that, we're going to go ahead and close out. So next week is Derek's good friend Charmin Smith, and and I'm excited to hear her, especially after Derek, what you were saying about her too. So we'll see you all next week at 6 o'clock, and hope to see you all in Memorial Stadium on Saturday for Colorado. So with that,
this prediction.
We're going to win. We're going to win because they're a running team. We're going to beat them.
All right.
Bye. Thanks, everyone.
Derek, do you have any eligibility left? Could you actually get out there and play?
You wouldn't want me on the football field. I would just like lie down and let people run over me. I'm not. I'm not. Like, look at my kid Marquez, my buddy Marquez. And when you look at his body, like, whoosh, boy, he can inflict.
Okay. All right, Derek, thanks so much. Thanks everybody for coming, and we'll see you all next week. Go Bears.
Bye. Go Bears. Thank you.
I was curious, does anyone go to the pregame on Maxwell Field for the season ticket holders? That might be a good place to meet.
Yeah, I haven't been there in a while, but